Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my channel and another STAMPtember limited edition collaboration. Today's collab is the very much anticipated Gina K Designs. This is the Shimmering Christmas set. To note, there's actually more than just the stamp and die set as part of this collab. All I had was a stamp and dies. I will link to the other products. They will be linked below for you to check out while supplies last because, as always, these limited edition collabs are limited edition. When they sell out, they are not restocked. However, all these brands have tons and tons of fabulous products to check out, Gina K being no exception, of course. So I will have a link to the Gina K product line if you have not heard of them or checked them out before. Definitely worth checking out because there's a lot to choose from. So, this Shimmering Christmas set, I took the ornament image from the set in one of the sentiments, and I stamped it onto some white cardstock with clear embossing ink. I had used my anti-static powder tool first, stamped it with clear embossing ink, and then coated it with Simon's Detail Gold embossing powder, melted it with my heat tool, and I ended up doing that 4 times. And then I did use the coordinating dies. However, images like this, you could just stamp and heat emboss onto a background if you didn't have the dies. And then just use like either circle masks or create your own circle masks with circle wafer dies that are roughly the same size as the ornaments. And then just create a mask and ink blend. That could actually look really pretty. After I was done it all, I was like, that would have worked really well. So it's an option. Anyway, I just used some Post-it tape to kind of just mask off so just the ornaments were exposed. And then I ink blended Altenew inks. And for the one batch, I did the Sweet Dreams quad, which is like Dewdrops and Aqualicious, Teal Cave, and Galactic Stream. So like aqua teal sort of inks. And blended that onto the ornaments. And then I did the same thing with the sentiments. And you can't see it. And heck, you can't even see it in real life. It's not just like in the video. But when you're using inks over embossing, the embossed images and sentiments, they resist the ink. However, ink is still sitting on top of them, especially dark colors. This you'll notice. So when I'm done my ink blending, I just take a microfiber cloth and I just wipe that embossing and it just removes the ink. And again, with lighter inks, it's not as big of a deal, but I still do it. With darker inks, you'll end up noticing it because it'll end up transferring to your fingers, etc., and getting everywhere. Plus, it dulls the embossing a bit. So when you wipe away that ink from the embossed images, it just brings the shine back. So after I'd blended those ornaments and sentiments, I took the lightest shade of the quad, which with this one it's Dewdrops. And I have some panels of cardstock here that I'd cut just slightly smaller, so they're about 4 by 5.25 inches. And I'm using the Pinkfresh 1-inch blender brushes to just create a really soft blend behind where I'm going to place the ornaments. So just a quick little swirl, nothing too crazy. And it's going to look a little silly until I get everything adhered, but I just did those little blends to sort of create that little bit of a glow. And then after I did that, I took some of the snowflake. There's like little snowflake images and then little like, I call them little starburst type images in this set. And I took a couple of those and I just stuck them to acrylic blocks so I could stamp them with the other shades of ink onto this background just to create, a little more interest and depth. So I just put the stamps onto acrylic blocks because then that way I could stamp them wherever I needed to and not need to use a stamp positioner. However, designs like this, if I was doing like mass producing like tons of them, then I would, because then you could just do like over, So anyway, stamped the little snowflakes and starbursts onto this background. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the remaining two, but just with a different color combo, just for funsies. Could do them all in the same color, whatever, floats your boat. But yeah, I get bored. After 2 cards, I'm like, bored, let's go on to the next color combo. And again, if I had the time, I would have done a whole bunch more, because I kept the design fairly simple, but there is something about gold heat embossing and snowflakes, all the fun things. So my other combo was the Blue Mountains quad, which is a very sort of blue-purple shades and love. So I did the exact same thing. I used my Post-it tape to mask off the top portions of these little ornament die cuts. And then ink blended, did the same thing with the sentiments, and then wiped everything with my microfiber cloth to remove any of that excess ink that's sitting on there. And then I did the same thing to the backgrounds with the lightest shade, which was Water Hyacinth, blended it with the blending brushes, stamped the same images with just the darker shades. Once all that was done, I then adhered these ornaments directly to the background. You could pop them up with foam tape, something like this. I would probably either do foam tape on the base, but I would probably die cut scraps, if I really wanted to build dimension, because that really narrow string for the ornaments, basically. I'm not going to put foam tape behind that. That's why I just glued it. I just glued it down. It was easier. So I glued it down. And then I'm going to make some custom splatter, because why not? So I used the Teal Cave color, smush that onto my palette. I'd put the backgrounds into my splat box. I added a bit of white gouache to my palette, and then also a little bit of water, just a smidge, and then mixed it all together. And then I've got my custom splatter. So I'm going to splatter this onto both of these backgrounds. Once I'm done doing that, I can set these aside for a minute to dry a bit. Wipe off my palette, clean off my brush, and then repeat the process. But this time I'll use the Crystal Violet shade to tint my gouache. And I've talked about this here and there before, because those that watch my videos, you guys know, I will split hairs over splatter, because it's just what I love to do. And this is me splitting hairs over it. You can splatter with ink, totally. It works, but I find a lot of times when I splatter with ink, as it soaks into the cardstock, it will kind of feather out. It doesn't always happen, but it happens enough that it just annoys me. It ends up looking like little fuzzy blobs. It's weird. Y'all, again, I've done so much splatter and I love it. So by mixing it with the gouache, it just adds, because the gouache has pigment in it, so it just adds almost like a little bit of extra thickness. I told y'all I can split hairs over splatter. So I just prefer it. I prefer how it looks. So I did that, and then I had to add gold splatter too. Just got to bring in a little bit more gold. So did the same thing, just added some gold splatter fairly heavily, really, to both of these sets of backgrounds. And then same thing, I would just set them aside and let them dry. And then while the backgrounds were drying, I stamped the card bases, the insides of my cards. All my card bases are A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So while all that splatter was drying, I put the card bases into my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp another sentiment from that Shimmering Christmas stamp set. And that I'm going to stamp with the darkest shade in each of these sets of inks. So Galactic Stream for 2 of the cards, and then Indigo Skies for the other 2. So got those stamped onto the insides of the cards. Could have just left it here, but I still wanted to stamp a few of the, couple more of the snowflakes and the little starbursts, just cause. I've talked about this before. When it comes to snowflake wafer dies and snowflake stamps, it's the same sort of theory with butterflies. You can never have too many in my opinion. They're all pretty and I love them. So did the same thing, just stuck a couple to my acrylic blocks and then just stamped a couple on the inside using the lighter shades as well, because things like this on the insides, I totally plan on, sometimes I'll write around it depending on what it is, but it's also with the intent that I'll just write right over it. It's just little extra bits of decoration. So I stamped those. I did the same thing with the aqua ones, which I'll show at the end. And then to build just a smidge of dimension, I just have some like thicker pieces of scrap cardstock. So I just adhered those to the back of these panels before adhering these to the card bases. So it just gives it a little bit of dimension without as much as you would get with using like foam tape and that. So adhered those that way. And then the sentiments I had backed with Simon's Big Mama foam tape. So that just popped those up again, just a smidge, you know, doesn't make them too thick, easily mailable. And then we're good. I decided to leave them just like this. I could have added, you know, tons of bling, all the fun things. But one, I am racing the clock with everything. And two, I liked just the color, the splatter, the hits of gold. It just worked. And especially when I tilt it in light, you can see it much better. Just how the gold picks up the light right there. Love it. Love it. So that were the cards I made with this set. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I'll have links to all the things, including the other products that were released as part of this collab. Those will be below for you to check out if you're interested. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. I appreciate you all so much, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!